Successful drug development hinges on multi-million dollars decisions about drug discovery, mechanism of action, safety and efficacy, dosage form, formulation strategies, patient's response, patent protection coupled with a strong market push. A new drug product is generally developed quietly and away from media glare. Contrary to this, media becomes hyperactive the moment it learns that a generic pharma industry is successful in its ANDA through Para 4 filing under the Drug Price Competition and Patent Term Restoration Act of 1984, or commonly and fondly known as Hatch-Waxman Amendments or Hatch-Waxman Act. However, many potential drug developers are not familiar with different abbreviated approval pathways, which are more lucrative in terms of exclusivities and lesser cost of drug development, along with shorter period of time to file the application. Para 4 filing is an expensive affair, which involves tedious litigations, risk of hefty compensation in case of failure, and marketing exclusivities not more than 180 days or 6 months in case of successful filing. Compare this exclusivity with 505(b)(2) applications, which may extend up to 7 years in case of orphan drugs. In fact, this act is among the few pieces of legislation that restricts the powers and reach of a federal agency. This act facilitates the filing of supplemental drug applications by generic companies by restricting the FDA from asking too much to a generic company except how generic firm is going to manufacture the drug, quality assurance aspects, and a study showing that the drug acts the same way in human as the innovator's drug called reference listed drug. The Hatch-Waxman Act also gives generic companies safe harbor from patent infringement lawsuits during the time when a generic company is preparing its drug application, thus permitting the generic company to learn how to manufacture the drug, manufacture a test batch, and run bioequivalence studies, all activities for which it could be sued for infringement. This protection is called the research exemption under the Act. Hi, I am Arvind Mittal, a pharma auditor and consultant. Subscribe my channel to gain most inside information of pharmaceutical industry. If you have not subscribed my channel so far, please do so right now by pressing subscribe button and press the bell icon so that you can get an instantaneous notification of my new videos. If my videos are relevant to your areas, then like and share them. Coming back to the topic, objective of my today's lecture is to apprise the small and medium pharmaceutical firms about the benefit of opting Section 505(b)(2) and evoke thought processes for drug innovation in the management of such firms. We shall discuss 505(b)(2) regulatory pathways of filing new drug application by generic pharmaceutical manufacturers, and will see that a mid-cap company having turnover of around $100 to $150 million per annum can also successfully file a new drug application in United States without spending millions of dollars on basic research and burning the time period of 10 to 12 years in drug discovery. In the end, we shall take up a few successful examples of 505(b)(2) applications where generics were able to lay their hands on major chunk of market profit. Before we discuss Section 505(b)(2) and its underlying implications on current drug industry, it would be pertinent to understand a brief history of Section 505 of Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act, codified under Article 21 of US Code 355. Section 505 describes drug approval processes. The Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act of 1938 established quality standards for food, drug, medical devices, and cosmetics manufactured and sold in United States. The law also provided for federal oversight and enforcement of these standards. FDC Act 1938 introduced Section 505A for new drug applications. In the year 1962, just after thalidomide crisis, an important amendment called Cofer-Harris Amendment or Drug Efficacy Amendment was introduced to amend FDC Act 1938. It introduced a requirement for drug manufacturers to provide proof of efficacy and safety of their drug before approval. The safety of a drug ensured that a validated clinical trial data by the manufacturer has to be submitted along with effectiveness claims. Cofer-Harris Amendment recognized need of a paper new drug application and abbreviated new drug application along with new drug application. Accordingly, two subsection 505B and 505J were introduced. Now, manufacturer required to file NDA and paper NDA under section 505B and abbreviated new drug application under section 505J. Section 505A became directive and authoritative in nature and read like this: no person shall introduce or deliver for introduction into interstate commerce any new drug unless an approval of an application filed pursuant to subsection B is effective with respect to such drug. Now, the application filed under section 505B need to carry full clinical reports of safety and efficacy data of new drugs. Section 505J created a space for generic drug players and introduced the term reference listed drug to refer to innovators' drug filed under section 505B. The application filed under this section were referred as abbreviated new drug application or ANDA or generic drug applications or equivalent drugs. Cofer-Harris Amendment was revolutionary in terms of ensuring safety and efficacy of new drugs, as well as introducing the concept of generic drug industry. However, Cofer-Harris Amendment failed to fuel drug competition for the simple reasons that Section 505J still required full clinical data of safety and efficacy of abbreviated new drug, which many generic manufacturers were reluctant to pursue. In brief, generic manufacturers were not ready to duplicate the data already generated by innovators. As a result, very few ANDA applications were filed and drug prices continue to remain exorbitant for common American people. Congress has for many years expressed interest in balancing the drug innovation and lowering the cost of health care. The Drug Price Competition and Patent Term Restoration Act of 1984, commonly known as the Waxman Act, addressed each of these concerns. Through amendments to both the patent law and the food and drug law, the Waxman Act established several practices intended to facilitate the marketing of generic pharmaceuticals while providing brand name firms with incentive to innovate. The Waxman Act established an expedited pathway for generic drug companies to obtain Food and Drug Administration approval for their products. It also created a legal safe harbor that shields generic applicants from charges of patent infringement until they request approval to market their products from the FDA. Hatch-Waxman Amendment bifurcated Section 505B into two new subsections, namely 505B1 and 505B2. Now, new drug applications with full clinical data are filed under Section 505B1, and supplementary new drug application having literature references or having clinical studies on which applicant does not have right of reference are to be filed under subsection 505B2. New clinical findings, new route of administration, new formulation of the reference listed drug, or new combinations were also allowed to be included under this subsection, thereby broadening the scope of subsection 505B2. Subsection 505J of an abbreviated new drug application was further modified, which allowed approval of generics as equivalent product to an existing brand product on the basis of bioequivalence studies only. The proposed generic drug has to be same in active ingredient, dosage form, route of administration, and other with respect to reference listed drug. Drugs filed under Section 505J are essentially duplicate drugs of RLD with minor variations, but therapeutically equivalent. Then there is subsection 505J2C of subsection 505J, where an applicant can file a petition ANDA for a drug product which differs from RLD in its dosage form, route of administration, etc., and FDA determines. I would emphasize that it is the sole prerogative of FDA to accept an application under this subsection. FDA determines in response to a petition of the applicant that additional clinical trials or studies are not required to support the approval of the new drug. Petition ANDA filed under subsection 505J2C and applications filed under 505B2 are similar in scope, but there is one major underlying difference of requirement of clinical trials. For application filed under subsection 505J2C, clinical studies are not required, in the opinion of FDA, while in 505B2 applications, additional clinical studies are required to support the application. As far as approval of various applications is concerned, new drug application and supplementary new drug application filed under subsection 505B1 and 505B2 are approved under subsection 505C, whereas ANDA and petitioned ANDA are approved under subsection 505J itself. Hatch-Waxman Amendment made it mandatory that all drug applications must be accompanied by patent certification by the applicant. Patent certifications are same for new drug application and ANDA. That is Para 1, Para 2, Para 3, and para 4 filing. However, depending on the nature of application, respective subsections are different. Accordingly, NDA and supplemental NDA applications are required to file patent certification under subsection 505(b)(2)(a), whereas ANDA and petition ANDA carry certification under subsection 505(j)(2)(a)(7). We shall see why paragraph 4 filing under subsection 505(b)(2)(a) carries less risk, thus making it an attractive choice for generic drug manufacturers as compared to certification under subsection 505(j)(2)(a)(7). Then sections of drug exclusivities are important to mention here. NDA and supplemental NDA applications are granted patent exclusivities under subsection 505(c)(3)(d), and ANDA and petition ANDA under subsection 505(j)(4)(d). For NDA, patent exclusivity is not more than 5 years, whereas for applications filed under subsection 505(b)(2), exclusivities may extend up to 7 years in case of orphan drugs. Exclusivity under subsection 505(b)(2) is another incentive to generic drug manufacturer. Compare this exclusivity with the exclusivity awarded to first ANDA holder under subsection 505(j)(4)(d) via paragraph 4, which is for 6 months only and carries potential risk of litigation by an innovator. Patent exclusivities are nothing but an instrument to extend patent term and designed to compensate the time lost during review of new drug application. By this instrument, innovators can enjoy extended period of patent enforcement even beyond 20 years of normal life of a patent. Therefore, Waxman Amendment 1984 was revolutionary in the sense that it brought a fine balance between drug innovator and generic drug manufacturer. On one hand, it provides safeguard to innovators by extending life of patent, which is called patent term restoration, and on the other hand, it provided safe harbor to generic drug manufacturers so that they can pursue basic drug research without fear of patent infringement. This part of the Act refers to drug price competition. So we can say that Waxman Amendment is an amalgamation of two concepts. That is, number one, drug price competition by encouraging generic drug industry, and number two, fueling drug innovation by granting exclusivities through patent term restoration. An analogy between the present Waxman Act with a burger or a sandwich can be made where the top slice represents new drug applications filed by innovator. So while giving full respect to scientists who have discovered a new drug, I have kept their contribution to the top. A new drug application filed under subsection 505(b)(1) contains full reports of investigations of safety and effectiveness that were conducted by the applicant, or studies were conducted by third parties on behalf of the applicant, and the applicant has a right of reference or use. Right of reference or uses indicates the ability of an applicant to show to the authorities that it contains raw data of those studies and have full authority to use that data. Bottom slice represents abbreviated new drug applications filed under subsection 505J, and it relies on FDA's finding that the previously approved drug product, that is the reference listed drug, is safe and effective. And ANDA generally must contain information to show that the proposed generic product is the same as RLD with respect to active ingredients, condition of use, route of administration, dosage form, strength, and labeling with certain permissible differences. Second prerequisite is a proposed drug product is bioequivalent to reference listed drug if the rate and extent of absorption of the proposed drug do not show a significant difference from rate and extent of absorption of RLD when administered at the same strength of the therapeutic ingredient under similar experimental condition in either a single dose or multiple doses. Significant difference is defined as bioavailability more than plus minus 20% of reference listed drug. This arbitrary parameter provides a window of 40% variation, enough for generic drug manufacturers to exploit. Since ANDA are essentially duplicate drugs and require least effort in research, I have kept them at the bottom. In addition, the sameness requirement also extends to the inactive ingredient in a generic drug product. Inactive ingredients that are not considered excipient, such as preservative, buffers, antioxidant, must be qualitatively and quantitatively the same as those in RLD or the reference listed drug. And ANDA may not be submitted if studies are necessary to establish safety and effectiveness of the proposed product. Because a generic drug is intended to act as a duplicate of RLD, no new safety or efficacy studies are performed, and only small confirmatory studies are allowed to support ANDA. If additional preclinical or clinical data are needed to support safety and efficacy, then the ANDA route is not appropriate and a 505(b)(2) NDA should be pursued. Section 505(b)(2) pathway is hybrid between Section 505(b)(1) and 505(j). 505(b)(2) allows the FDA to approve marketing applications for non-innovator drugs that do not otherwise qualify for approval under Section 505(j). Under this section, the approval may rely in whole or in part on published literature and or on FDA's finding of safety and effectiveness of an approved drug. Certain findings and data submitted in support of 505(b)(2) application will stem from investigations that were not conducted by the applicant, or applicant has referred to additional studies conducted by third parties and for which applicant has not obtained a right of reference. Right of reference roughly translates into the access to the raw data of clinical studies and authority to use that data by the applicant. Changes to approved drugs that would require 505(b)(2) NDA include differences in dosage form, strength, route of administration, formulation, for example, excipient, dosing regimen, active ingredients, for example, different salt or enantiomer, or indication, for example, repurposed drug. In Europe, a regulatory approval route similar to the 505(b)(2) application is hybrid procedure based on Article 10 of Directive 2001/83/EC. A fourth type of ANDA is petitioned ANDA. A petitioned ANDA is a type of ANDA for a drug product that differs from RLD in its dosage form, route of administration, strength, or active ingredient in combination product, for example, in products with more than one active ingredient and for which FDA has determined in response to a petition submitted under Section 505(j)(2)(c) of the FDC Act that studies are not necessary to establish the safety and effectiveness of the proposed drug product. We must keep in mind that it is the sole prerogative of FDA to determine whether a proposed product will be covered under Section 505(b)(2), new drug application, or shall be dealt with under petitioned ANDA. Petitioned ANDA and 505(b)(2) applications are similar in scope, but there is one major underlying difference of requirements of clinical studies. For application filed under petitioned ANDA, clinical studies are not required, in the opinion of FDA, while in 505(b)(2) applications, additional clinical studies are required to support the application. In recent years, FDA is discouraging petitioned ANDA. Therefore, we shall not take up this pathway further. Scope of 505(b)(2) is quite broad, and this section gives tremendous flexibility of innovation to a drug manufacturer. This feature of Section 505(b)(2) makes drug development process far more attractive than Section 505(j) of ANDA route. It is advantageous for a product to be approved via 505(b)(2) route for several reasons. Most particularly, these applications rely on existing safety and efficacy data of drugs approved by FDA. Thus, the cost of timeline to develop these products are lower as fewer studies are required. Since these applications rely on previously generated safety data, the adverse event profile is better understood. Section 505(b)(2) of FDC Act allows FDA to approve marketing applications for non-innovator drugs that do not otherwise qualify for approval under 505(j). Under this section, the approval may rely in whole or in part on published literature and/or on FDA's finding of safety and effectiveness for an approved drug. Certain findings and data submitted in support of a 505(b)(2) application may also come from investigations that were not conducted by the applicant and for which the applicant has not obtained a right of reference. Change to approved drugs that would require a 505(b)(2) NDA pathway include changing a drug from a prescription indication to an over-the-counter indication. For example, change from injectable to mouth spray or nasal spray. New indications or repurposed drug or repositioned drugs. For example, use of metformin in weight loss management in addition to type 2 diabetes management. Another example is several existing antiviral medications previously developed or used as treatment for severe acute respiratory syndrome SARS, Middle East respiratory syndrome MERS, HIV, AIDS, and malaria have been researched as potential COVID-19 treatment agents. Some of the examples of new indications for COVID-19 treatment are tocilizumab, ivermectin, remdesivir, dexamethasone, etc. A manufacturer can substitute an active pharmaceutical ingredient in a combination product. Some of the examples are antihypertensive like diuretics plus potassium sparing diuretics, beta blockers plus diuretics, ACE angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors plus diuretics, and calcium channel blockers plus AEC inhibitors. Then dosage regimen. Best example is change from thrice daily to once daily or from once daily to once in a week regimen. Drug with new ingredients from animal or botanical source, including new excipients obtained from natural sources or obtained from recombinant technology, also qualifies for 505(b)(2) application. New molecular entity. Certain drugs are classified as new molecular entities for purpose of FDA review. Many of these products contain active moieties that have not been approved by FDA previously, either as a single ingredient drug or as part of a combination product. These products frequently provide important new therapies for patients. New molecular entities contain active moieties that are closely related to active moieties in products that have previously been approved by FDA. For example, amoxicillin with clavulanic acid and ceftazidime plus avibactam. Formulation change. Some of the examples are change from immediate release to sustained release tablets and development of taste masking formulation for pediatric use. Then change in drug delivery system. Switch from injectable to nasal spray or change from subcut injection to dermal patch are some of the examples for 505(b)(2) application. The listeners may realize that many aspects discussed here have overlapping scope for 505(b)(2) qualification, which makes this pathway flexible. Now we can see that Section 505(b)(2) is more lucrative as compared to Section 505(j), since it provides tremendous flexibility in drug development and thus more opportunities to drug manufacturers. Then comes the aspects of exclusivities. A 5-year period of exclusivity is granted to new drug applications for product containing chemical entities which never previously approved by FDA, either alone or in combination. No 505(b)(2) application or ANDA may be submitted during the 5-year exclusivity period, except that such applications may be submitted after 4 years if they contain a certification of patent invalidity or non-infringement. 180-day exclusivity. Under Hatch-Waxman Amendment, a company can seek FDA approval to make a generic drug before the expiration of patent related to the brand name drug that the generic seeks to copy. To seek this approval, a generic applicant must provide in its application a certification that a patent submitted to FDA by brand name drugs sponsor and listed in FDA's Orange Book is, in the generic applicant's opinion and to the best of its knowledge, invalid, unenforceable, or will not be infringed upon by the generic product. This certification is called a paragraph 4 certification. FDA determines that the first company which has submitted a substantially complete application with paragraph 4 certification to at least one of the patents listed in the Orange Book is eligible for exclusive right to market the generic drug for 180 days. Now, compare 505J application with 505B2 application and exclusivities. A 3-year period of exclusivity is granted for a drug product that contains an active moiety that has been previously approved and contains reports of new clinical investigations other than bioavailability studies conducted or sponsored by the sponsor, which were essential to approve the application. For example, changes in an approved drug product that differ in its active ingredient, strength, dosage form, route of administration, or condition of use may be granted exclusivity if clinical investigations were essential. A new chemical entity like ceftazidime plus avibactam is granted 5 years of exclusivity beyond 5 years of NDA exclusivity under Section 505B1. If a manufacturer is working on an orphan drug, then this exclusivity extends up to 7 years. In case of pediatric drug, additional 6 months of exclusivity is granted over and above 3 or 5 years. Overall scenario of 505B2 application can be understood with the help of time bar diagram. A 5-year exclusivity is granted to a new drug application filed under Section 505B1. During first 4 years, FDA shall not accept 505B2 or 505J ANDA application. In the 5th year, the window of filing ANDA is opened up and 180-day exclusivity is granted to a manufacturer who is first to file ANDA application with Para 4 certification. The same window opens up for 505B2 applicant if a 505B2 applicant wishes to file new drug application in the 5th year itself, then it will be required to file the same with paragraph 4 certification. The procedure for paragraph 4 is same for 505B2 and 505J application and involves potential litigation risk with NDA holder. Now compare the exclusivities granted under Section 505B2, which extends beyond 5-year exclusivity granted under Section 505B1. If a manufacturer adopts 505B2 pathway, then it can still enjoy exclusivities beyond 5 years, a luxury not available to even first ANDA holder. Prolonged exclusivities are the greatest attraction and reward to a 505B2 applicant. Then administrative strategies for successful 505B2 application. Sponsors are encouraged to review FDA guidance document before requesting meeting with the agency. The guidance document determining whether to submit an ANDA or a 505(b)(2) application, finalized in May 2019, provides direction regarding whether the 505(b)(2) pathway is feasible. It is important to note that the guidance document does not provide much detail regarding the development of the drug and what is or what is not required. An applicant must fully understand the FDA's expectations to provide the appropriate information in the application and avoid any potential deficiency letter in response to drug product applications. Since sponsors frequently misunderstand which studies need to be conducted to support a 505(b)(2) application, it is critical to have an open discussion with FDA early in the process. For a successful project, sponsors should initiate the 505(b)(2) program with FDA by requesting a pre-investigational new drug application meeting. This meeting can be conducted prior to any actual cGMP work being undertaken and should follow the draft guidance formal meeting between FDA and sponsors or applicant of PDUFA product. At the pre-IND meeting, the organization should seek to obtain FDA input and agreement with its proposed strategy, which includes proposed manufacturing process, product composition, analytical plan, and clinical studies. The organization should also seek agency agreement regarding reference listed drug to be utilized for comparing purposes. And it is typically selected based upon similarities between the commercial product and the proposed 505(b)(2) product. As previously mentioned, since a large portion of data will be incorporated into the submission by referencing existing data, the pre-IND meeting outcome should result in FDA agreement of a minimal need for additional clinical trials. Depending upon the situation and the proposed changes, the agency may require further efficacy and safety trial in situations such as targeted use in a special population, for example, pediatric use, newly proposed indications, bioavailability, bioequivalence studies, or determination of efficacy of new route of administration. It is worth mentioning that all studies agreed upon must be conducted using proposed commercial product manufactured under cGMP conditions. The studies will include bridging studies to fulfill the gap between reference listed drug and proposed new drug application, and stability studies to propose shelf life of the product. It is important to consider the advantages of 505(b)(2) pathway to drug approval. There is a reduced timeline and cost to approval, reduced risk due to prior knowledge and behavior of active ingredient, and potential marketing exclusivities. Now, for the purpose of illustration, we shall take up a brief analysis of three different 505(b)(2) approvals, including their notable features. The first example is Trinidad versus Bendeca, having active pharmaceutical ingredient bendamustine hydrochloride. It is an orphan drug and used in treatment of patient with chronic lymphocytic leukemia and patient with indolent B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma that has progressed during or within 6 months of treatment with rituximab or rituximab 5-fluorouracil combination regimen. It is an example of formulation change, and drug falls in the category of orphan drug. Cephalon Incorporation got NDA in 2008 as reference listed drug. The dosage form is lyophilized single-use vial containing either 25 milligram or 100 milligram powder formulation. Reconstitution in water for injection is required, and the whole content should be infused during 60 minutes through intravenous drip. The 505(b)(2) application of Eagle Pharma Bendeka was approved in December 2015 with same indication as its predecessor RLD Trinidad. Bendeka is a 100 mg per 4 ml or 25 mg per ml clear colorless to yellow ready to dilute solution in a multi-dose vial. It can be stored at room temperature, and the biggest advantage is that single vial for multiple dose can be used up to 28 days. The treatment cycle of bendamustine hydrochloride is 28 days. It means that a single vial can be used even for a second cycle, resulting in tremendous saving on part of patient. The application for Bendeka presented a modified dosage form comprised of ready to dilute solution, facilitating multiple doses from same vial and less infusion time, which is 10 minutes. Relying upon previous clinical studies conducted on Trinidad, Eagle was permitted to demonstrate evidence of bioequivalence to Trinidad for approval of Bendeka. Bendeka, the new formulation, proved to be a financial success. Launched by marketing partner Teva in January 2016, the drug has captured 70% of total market. Then Avakas, that is a ceftazidime avibactam sodium antibiotic drug. Fortas, the reference listed drug of ceftazidime is third generation cephalosporin assigned to Teligent. The drug is used for complicated intra-abdominal infections, used in combination with metronidazole, and complicated urinary tract infection, including pyelonephritis in patients who have limited or no alternative options. Avakas is a fixed combination antibacterial indicated for treatment of patients 18 years or older with infections caused by the same Fortas resistant bacteria. Notably, the avibactam component was a new chemical entity. FDA agreed that a 505(b)(2), relying in part on previous finding of safety and efficacy of Fortas, could be submitted, and that the additional data would include data from non-clinical phase 1 and phase 2 trials. At the same time, safety data on avibactam was drawn from patients who received the combination. Because the components could not be studied as monotherapy, the contribution of avibactam component was primarily assessed in vitro studies. In vitro means outside the human body, and in animal models of infection, where the addition of avibactam restored the activity of ceftazidime against ceftazidime non-susceptible bacteria. This 505(b)(2) is also notable for its use of generating antibiotics incentive now, that is the GAIN program. GAIN was introduced as part of the 2012 Food and Drug Administration Safety and Innovation Act. GAIN provided that certain antibacterial and antifungal drugs intended to treat serious or life-threatening infections caused by antibacterial or antifungal resistant pathogen may be designated as Qualified Infection Disease Product QIDP. Under GAIN, a QIDP product is eligible for both priority review and FDA fast track designation, as well as an additional 5 year of exclusivity, that is 5 year for NCE, and another 5 year qualified infection disease product, thus making it 10 years. Avakas is the 5th approved antibacterial drug product approved under the GAIN program. We can see that IND approval date was 2015, and due to both 5 plus 5 years exclusivity, Allergen has free field to run up to 2025. According to Pfizer Pharma, Allergen forecasts sale of Avakas to the tune of $300 million. However, right now, Allergen is facing shortage of avibactam. It would be interesting to note mergers and acquisition of pharmaceutical firms. Cerexa Incorporation was acquired by Forest Laboratories in 2006, which was in turn purchased by Actavis in 2014. Actavis is a wholly owned subsidiary of Allergen Pharmaceuticals. When a company is acquired by a new company, all the assets of the parent company, including but not limited to trademarks and patents, are transferred to new company. Therefore, if you presently see the orange book for Avakas, you will find the name of Allergen Pharmaceuticals. Then the third example is Narcan intranasal spray. Naloxone hydrochloride is indicated for emergency treatment of known or suspected opioid overdose, like heroin. Narcan intranasal is an example of both changes in dosage form and route of administration. Drug overdose, including most commonly opioid overdose, has been described as leading cause of accidental death in US today. Adapt Pharma is NDA holder for Narcan, which was approved in 1985. Initially, Narcan was only approved in injectable form, most commonly delivered by syringe or auto-injector. Many primary healthcare workers and emergency first responders reported difficulty in administering injection due to a variety of reasons. Some of the most reported limitations were delay in response on part of paramedics and seizure due to opioid overdose. The 505(b)(2) for Narcan was submitted by Adapt Pharma on July 20th, 2015, and proposed a change to both dosage form and route of administration, converting the drug product from injectable to intranasal. Adapt used injectable Narcan as RLD. The application relied upon a relative bioavailability study in healthy volunteers. However, because injectable Narcan has been discontinued, Adapt used an injection as comparator to bridge FDA previous finding for Narcan. The application was granted priority review status based on product's importance to the public health. The application was approved 4 months after its submission. On November 18, 2015, and was launched in early 2016. Primarily targeted were 3 markets. Number 1, current heroin addicts. Number 2, first responders who could administer naloxone in an emergency response situation. And number 3, those who have opioid prescriptions. Many first responders and primary caregivers have reported that the nasal spray formulation is easier to deliver and eliminates the risk of injectable form. In approving the application, FDA noted that this application represents the first nasal naloxone spray to meet the criteria for novel naloxone products described by agency. Further, FDA announced that they plan to facilitate industry to submit an NDA for an Rx to OTC switch for naloxone hydrochloride so that drug can be freely made available. The market for Narcan nasal spray is projected in excess of $2 billion. On 29th April 2021, FDA announced the approval of Cloxodo, a higher dose of naloxone hydrochloride nasal spray product to treat opioid overdose by Hikma Pharmaceuticals, USA, through 505(b)(2) approval pathway. The newly approved product delivers 8 mg of naloxone into nasal spray instead of 4 mg. Narcan nasal spray. This was an example of change in dose strength of the existing formulation. In this case, the manufacturer relied in part on FDA findings of safety and effectiveness of Narcan injection to support approval. The applicant demonstrated that reliance on FDA finding of safety and effectiveness for Narcan was scientifically justified and provided Cloxodo specific pharmacokinetic data to establish the drug safety and efficacy for its approved use. In instances where Narcan nasal spray 4 mg had been used, it was found that 34% of attempted reversal of overdose cases required 2 or more doses. Further, it was found that uses percent of multiple doses of naloxone during 2013 to 2016 had increased to over 43%. However, FDA didn't grant exclusivity to Hikma, an indication that USFDA is still open to more innovative treatment of opioid overdose by naloxone hydrochloride. So we have seen distinction between a pure NDA, supplemental NDA, and ANDA. Supplemental NDA are filed under Section 505(b)(2) and generally contains same active ingredient as reference listed drug, but still differ in ways this medication works. Is this considered to be a novel drug, a generic drug, or something entirely different? The implication of these questions are far-reaching and impact not only key drug development decisions in an organization, but also the ways a generic manufacturer is accustomed to do the work. A generic company can boost her financial prospects tremendously by adopting 505(b)(2) regulatory pathways. The recent trends of filing NDA indicates towards this direction. Hope you have enjoyed my presentation. If you have some query or questions, then comment lines are open. It would be my endeavor to answer your questions as soon as possible. Okay, so let's meet again with a new topic. Take care.